Welcome, I'm Barry Kiebrick, and today we're going to try to put an end to crony capitalism and governmental corruption. In part one of my conversation with F.H. Buckley, the distinguished law professor, we discussed why distrust in our government is so prevalent.
People ask me, you're talking about corruption in America. I don't get it. I mean, I don't see it. And I say, there's this place called Illinois. Have you ever heard of it? 4 ex-governors in prison.
Another day, another corruption scandal.
We're a state run by a group of pirates.
Dan Walker, terrible fall from grace.
Town president charged in a mob-connected insurance scheme.
Corruption. It's our brand.
Governor Blagojevich tried to sell the Senate seat vacated by President-elect Obama.
Congressman Jackson misused campaign funds.
It never stops in Illinois.
Comptroller embezzled $54 million.
Illinois is almost a failed state.
People have died because of corruption.
Governor Ryan goes to prison.
18 felony counts.
We have institutionalized corruption.
If Illinois voters want reform, they've given no evidence that they want it.
My name is James Todd Lincoln, and while our DNA is not a match, I just know I'm the great-great-great-grandson of President Abraham Lincoln, and that's a big responsibility. You won't find me in the history books, but you can find me online.
James Todd, this way.
Now, being a Lincoln gives me a certain amount of gravitas, but it's my academic credentials that give me the credibility to tell this story of corruption. I feel a duty to call attention to how thoroughly broken Illinois' political system is and has been since the last time great-granddad went to the theater. I think you should also know I'm a micro-influencer, activist, and philanthropist. Finally, I want the Lincoln brand associated with something meaningful again, a duty some members of my family have neglected in recent years. Aside from the obvious resemblance, I don't have a lot in common with Honest Abe. I'm not much of a rail splitter, and I don't have a head for the law, but I do share his principles. Great-granddad once said, "Stand with anybody that stands right, stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong." I know Abe would be disgusted by just how many Illinois politicians and other public servants have gone wrong. And I feel obligated to help save Illinois by calling out the voters' terrible tendency to elect and re-elect the worst possible people.
I don't blame crooked politicians anymore. I blame the voters. I mean, they keep re-electing these clowns.
That's true. And here's something else. Political corruption in Illinois is inclusive.
Political corruption comes in all shapes and sizes. Democrats, Republican, men, women, husbands, wives.
It has nothing to do with gender or race or class.
Corruption in Illinois is a state of mind.
We have institutionalized corruption.
It's in our DNA.
In fact, there are so many corrupt politicians, the state is teetering on the brink of both moral and financial collapse.
Illinois is the worst governed state, not just in the country. I would argue it's the worst governed state in the history of the country. And that's really it by the numbers.
Illinois is now $142 billion in long-term debt. That's almost the worst of any state in the nation by $80 billion.
Illinois is ranked dead last in fiscal health. It has the lowest credit rating of any state. Its bonds are almost at junk level, and it has some of the highest property taxes and one of the worst pension crises in America.
Illinois is deep in the hole. 25% of every tax dollar goes to paying pensions, and we have $134 billion in unfunded pension obligations. Taxpayers should be furious with their leaders.
People are leaving the state as fast as they can.
All right, we are just getting some images coming into us regarding Illinois, people running away from high taxes.
Isn't it time for the citizens of the Prairie State to get more involved, to actually show up to vote, and to hold their leaders accountable? Because we Lincolns believe Illinois is worth saving, and here's why. By the way, the S is silent. And there's an ongoing debate about what the word Illinois means. Some say it's the French spelling of an Indian word, roughly translated, tribe of superior men. If only that were true. Now, I'm hoping residents of Illinois already know this stuff, but for everyone else, here are some fast facts. Illinois is one of 50 U.S. states, and it's located in the Midwest. It's bordered by Indiana in the east, the Mississippi River in the west, and Lake Michigan is on its northeast corner. And that's where Chicago is. It's the third largest city in the country, but Chicago's not the state capital. That's Springfield, downstate, where Granddad lived.
Point of interest, the state bird of Illinois is the northern cardinal.
Thank you, Tim. Illinois has about 12.8 million people, and it's the fifth largest economy in the U.S. Illinois has always been a major transportation hub. A lot of trains, planes, trucks, and even ships pass through it. And that means jobs and money. On the surface, this 200-year-old state looks functional. Rich farmland, over 30 Fortune 500 companies, a thriving arts scene, museums, prestigious universities, major sports teams, and great food. Much of it meat-based, but still great.
Where was the Twinkie invented? Chicago.
Yes. Chicago's got a beautiful lakefront, enormous Picasso, and a highly reflective silver bean. So Chicago attracts millions of tourists and their dollars every year. A lot of internationally famous characters have come out of Illinois or Chicago. And let's not forget Honest Abe. He was an Illinois congressman, then our 16th president. He was a Republican who ended slavery, and he set a standard for Illinois politicians that sadly few have lived up to. And that's the problem. Because if you take a closer look at the Prairie State, its long, dark history of political corruption has nearly destroyed it. While it may not be as bad as D.C. or Louisiana, and that's not saying much, something is rotten in the land of Lincoln. And that something is the politicians who are in it for themselves.
Politics in Chicago and Illinois is transactional.
Everybody wants something in return. Nobody's doing it because they want to be public servants.
One of this town's most loved columnists, Mike Royko.
Royko once suggested Chicago's motto be changed in Latin, ubi est mea.
Ubi est mea. Where's mine?
Where's mine? Because that's just such a fundamental part of Illinois politics.
We're a state run by a group of pirates who've basically been in it to enrich themselves and their families.
From aldermen to governors to congressmen, there's been a whole, rogues gallery of people who have been convicted. This place is a cesspool.
So let's take a look at the kinds of people who are attracted to Illinois politics. They're not all bad, but many love the showbiz aspect of the job more than the actual job. Holding office is a chance to be in the spotlight, satisfying their need for love and attention. It gives them instant status they haven't earned.
Illinois is a place where politicians are like celebrities, and people can get hooked on that. And after they get hooked, they don't know how to give it up.
Others are drawn to Illinois politics for the money.
The leader of politicians, motivated primarily by money, is the House Speaker Michael Madigan, who has amassed a tremendous personal fortune as a property tax lawyer.
And as property tax lawyers, these public servants can make big money, helping the big property owners avoid paying big property taxes. And that sets the stage for potential conflicts of interest, which means lots of money for them.
Illinois' most influential politicians are lawyers who specialize in the art of lowering property tax bills. Former Governor Pat Quinn did it. The Senate President of Illinois, John Cullerton, does it.
That's not serving the public. So how does this property tax reduction racket work? Well, when you're a powerful elected official who's been in office for years, you use your clout as a big-shot politician to influence the elected tax assessor about the amount of property taxes they're going to levy on your private sector clients. Incredibly, this is legal in Illinois.
And also, they have the power to draft legislation that actually supports their business. Something could be legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's moral.
For the politicians who are primarily in the game for money, when their legal income is still not enough, they start to demand kickbacks, engage in shakedowns, or use bribery and other scams to further enrich themselves. Some get away with it, some don't. According to the Department of Justice Public Integrity section, since 1976, almost 2,000 elected and appointed Illinois public officials from both parties have been convicted of corruption. And don't forget the 4 governors in 4 decades, 3 Democrats and 1 Republican.
If an Illinois governor gives you his cell number, he may not be talking about his phone.
You know what's a nice touch in Illinois? The governors make your license plates.
Let's see what time it is. It's afternoon. Good afternoon, Illinois.
Bruce Rauner, when he talked to his family about running for governor, his daughter came up to him and said, "Please, Daddy, I don't want you to go to prison."
Former Republican Governor Bruce Rauner is a good example of another kind of person attracted to Illinois politics. The emergence of super-rich candidates like Rauner is a growing trend, and not just in Illinois. They've already got money, and they've already gotten a lot of attention because they have money. So why would a super-rich person want to be governor of Illinois, arguably the worst job in politics? Their cliché answer is to give back to the community, but it's mostly about their legacy and the prestige.
I'm honored, I'm privileged, and I'm excited.
One-term Governor Rauner, who claimed he was never really in charge of the state, lacked the shady skill set necessary to deal with the Speaker of the House, Mike the Velvet Hammer Madigan, the guy who actually is in charge. So Rauner was easily defeated by another super-rich guy, Democrat J.B. Pritzker, the Hyatt Hotel heir and one of the richest politicians in America.
If I'm elected governor, I will be in charge.
So Pritzker spent over $170 million of his own money, more than any politician in U.S. history, for a chance to try to be in charge of Illinois. Like most super-rich, Rauner and Pritzker are practitioners of tax avoidance, employing offshore accounts and other legal loopholes to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. But Pritzker went beyond that. Just prior to running for governor, the billionaire hatched a scheme to avoid paying a measly, for him anyway, $300,000 in property taxes on one of his mansions. He had his wife and her workmen remove 5 toilets, claiming the mansion was now uninhabitable. While this lowered his property taxes, it denied the state badly needed revenue. But in Illinois, this is considered leading by example. Nice start, Governor Pritzker.
Chicago banned pay toilets in 1973.
Okay.
Categorizing like self-funding wealthy guys as not corruptible is a huge mistake.
Remember, the people who run the show care about themselves, not us.
And they also care about the perks. Because if you're elected to a higher office in Illinois, like congressman, senator, governor, or mayor, you're going to meet famous, powerful people. You'll also attend ceremonies and dinners where they'll make you feel important.
They like the adulation, and they are easily seduced by the power of their position.
And power is the biggest perk of all, because if you've made a name for yourself in Illinois politics, presidents will seek your endorsement.
I come to Illinois and ask your help.
And once you've helped elect them, they might also seek your counsel, and then you've really arrived.
Hello, my friend. How are you? How are you? How are you? Say, I'm a little worried about Shriver trying to build up all this stuff down here about going back to Illinois. Yeah, he wants to run for governor. That's exactly.
So everyone knows power corrupts. But what else foments corruption? Personally, I think Illinois has too much government. For example, 50 aldermen sitting on the Chicago City Council is about 30 aldermen too many.
We have about 7,000 units of local government.
I think we have the most elected officials of any state in the nation, despite being the 6th most populous.
So that means Illinois has more government than Texas, California, New York, and Florida. And that means more opportunities for corrupt politicians to steal, or to hire or promote unqualified family and friends to fill all those jobs.
If you take a classical politician like Vito Marzullo, he had more than 20 members of his family working for the city and other branches of government.
And here's something else that keeps Illinois mired in corruption.
We have a poisonous political culture in the state, and it poisons everything and everybody who stays. The whole purpose of winning office is to get in there and distribute the jobs and goodies to my family and my friends. That's what the Democrats do. The Republican Party, largely being complicit, we do it too. And that propagates the culture.
So yes, both Democrats and Republicans abuse power when they're in office. But keep in mind, Democrats have been the dominant party in Illinois for decades. And don't confuse Illinois Democrats with the hippie NPR types you might find back east or out west. Our Dems are more gangster.
Democrats come in two flavors: machine hacks and reformers.
They're not Democrats in the traditional sense that we think are liberal type people as far as ideologically.
They're not driven by the sort of issues of the day. They're driven by power.
It's not about moving forward with a progressive agenda or anything like that.
A lot of them are Dinos, but Democrats in name only.
And it seems citizens of Illinois are okay with this. I worry about what else they're okay with.
Here's the reality. The level of acceptance of corruption in the state of Illinois is very, very high.
It's not just that corruption is tolerated, it's almost celebrated.
Voters celebrating corruption? That's disturbing. But until very recently, there's been little evidence to the contrary. For decades, the public has perpetuated corruption by either not voting or voting for shady candidates.
People often ask, why do people in Illinois keep voting these crooks into office? They don't realize that the candidates that we get, typically in both parties, come up through the corrupt system, and we don't really have that much of a choice.
Chicagoans and Illinoisans, because everything radiates out from Chicago, we suffer from the most virulent strain of Stockholm Syndrome in the Western Hemisphere. We identify with our captors.
And in Illinois, our captors are the politicians, many of whom are either under investigation, under indictment, or just never prosecuted. Like that old crook Alderman Vito Marzullo, the mob's man in City Hall, seen here with the mob's other man in City Hall, Alderman Fred Rohde. Alderman Marzullo ran his ward unopposed for more than 30 years, like he was the Godfather.
John, when I sick with anybody there, send them in. What the hell you got over there?
Well, a little of everything, Alderman.
I was up for promotion and my boss said to talk to you.
That's why you had come down here? What's new, Tommy?
Not much. Got a little complaint.
Little complaint?
Yeah, just a little one.
Goodbye. I can't start this program because if I started that program, somebody else come into another program.
I'm sorry for taking your time.
Forget it, young man.
Basically, what you have is the city and state government took over the rackets from the mob. They just legalized it. So the crime families are elected officials.
Selling weed is the latest example of Illinois government taking over a racket. Can prostitution be far behind? But the best example is still the Illinois lottery. Now controlled by state officials, it's really just a new, legal version of the old numbers racket, formerly run by the mob. Then there's this. Illinois already has more places to legally gamble than Las Vegas. And where do those profits go? Hint, they don't all go to the state. And the big media companies also benefit from corruption. The demand for stories about the grafters and gangsters who hold public office in Illinois is huge.
It is shameful that Chicago has so many crooked politicians, but as a talk show host,
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
The biggest game in town is politics, and it has served all of us well, all of us in our business. It's beautiful in its own way. It's ugly, but it's beautiful.
I've always had an interest in politics. It's what I studied in college, but I did not know what I was getting into when I came here.
If there weren't so many political crooks in this state, there wouldn't be so many of us writing about it. Mike Sneed of the Sun-Times has been doing it for years.
When I first started doing the column, people thought that entertainment was what everybody wanted. Well, in Chicago, entertainment was politics.
But some of our media stars have been known to give certain politicians and their wives a break.
The media is often very complicit in helping to enable these people in terms of their corruption.
They have sacred cows, and you see it in the stories they choose to write and don't choose to write.
But to compensate for the suck-ups, there have always been journalists like these characters, and we need more of them.
Why is it okay for you to support, in essence, you're supporting a...
No, I'm not. But you give those kinds of people credibility when you show up there and you...
No, I organize. This is my party.
Not a personal thing, Mayor.
No, it
It's a question
never gets
about-
personal with a journalist. Any other questions?
Well, Dominic Longo's a convicted felon and he's a supervisor.
And that has been a basic problem.
At this point in our story, you might be wondering how long this corruption has been going on.
You can dig as far back into Illinois political history as you want, and your hands are still gonna come out dirty. Even Lincoln was no angel.
Now hold on there. Historians generally agree that widespread, serious corruption in Illinois took root after great-granddad was assassinated. The event that triggered it was the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. Legend has it a Mrs. O'Leary's cow was to blame for a blaze that wiped out a third of the city and left 100,000 homeless. The end result was the perfect environment for corruption. Developers came looking for contracts to rebuild the city and used bribery to get them. Once they had the contract, they'd get shaken down by various city inspectors and lawmakers looking for their share of the loot. And so this tradition of graft was born, and it persisted largely due to the advent of political machines. Republicans may have initiated the machine concept, but Democrats really put it to work in Illinois. So what is a machine?
A political machine is normally a political party or political faction, and their purpose is to gain power and to control the government. To do that, they use patronage.
Patronage, the power to control appointments to office in exchange for money and favors.
Corrupt contracts.
Corrupt contracts, issuing contracts to those who may not be qualified in exchange for money and favors.
Nepotism.
Nepotism, the hiring of family members regardless of their qualifications in exchange for money and favors.
The beginning of the machine, the real machine was Democrat Carter Harrison. He led the city coming back from the Great Fire. And then he was assassinated at the very moment of his greatest glory, the Great World's Fair. And the next Carter Harrison, his son, was elected and re-elected. The Harrisons were like the Daleys of the 19th century. The legendary Big Bill Thompson operated Chicago's Republican machine at the time with the help of Al Capone, who became his very close associate. Apparently, Al Capone's boys used hand grenades and disrupted polling stations in areas where Thompson's opponents were very strong. In 1931, Thompson lost his drive for re-election, and it was not only the end of his career, it was kind of the end of the Republican Party in Chicago.
After Big Bill, his successor, Democrat Anton Cermak, could only be seen as a reformer. The Czech-born immigrant is widely considered to be the godfather of the modern Democratic machine, which has kept the Chicago mayor's office free of Republicans for almost 100 years. Cermak went out the way godfathers usually go out. He caught a bullet. Many historians believe assassin Giuseppe Zangaro was actually aiming at the man standing next to Cermak, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Ed Kelly succeeded Cermak with his Kelly-Nash machine. They worked tirelessly to keep Democrats in power while fattening Kelly's personal bank account. But it was the young man Kelly mentored who became the biggest big city boss of all time, Mayor Richard J. Daley. Famously dubbed the American Pharaoh, Daley ran Chicago like he owned it, and he was never satisfied with how the media covered him.
Mayor Daley blew up at cameramen and reporters Wednesday.
No comment.
Daley pushed the television camera aside and said,
"Get out of my way. Watch it, guys. Watch it."
Reporters again tried to question him, but again Daley had no comment.
By controlling the message as much as he could, Daley used his machine to make sure everyone knew who was in charge and what a great job Boss Daley was doing.
Chicago, Chicago, queen of the inland sea, today thy past and future meet to honor thee.
Hi, I'm Norm Barry, enjoying spring in the park and the city that cares. All around the families of Chicago, the city's services may be seen. The city is constantly working to protect the health of its people. Chicago was cited as the safest city in the country, where the city's police department continues to wage a vigilant fight against crime. There are 12,000 litter baskets throughout the city. A very progressive step has recently been taken by the city of Chicago in the field of mental health. Chicago's enjoying a building boom. At the dedication of the Chicago Circle campus, Mayor Daley said,
"This great university will be the beginning of the great renaissance and the rebuilding of the entire west side of Chicago."
Propaganda films painted a rosy picture, but Daley was in total denial about life for Chicago's minorities, most of whom were living in abject poverty and Depression-era conditions. The so-called city that works wasn't working for Black Chicago.
We had what I considered a very meaningful, frank, objective discussion with the mayor today on all of the problems of Chicago.
We have no ghettos in Chicago at all. Total dilapidated buildings in Chicago are lower than any large metropolitan area in the United States. So we have no ghetto, and we have no Negro ghetto.
Daley, ever the builder and public works mayor, thought by tearing down old ghettos and replacing them with new federally funded vertical ghettos, he had adequately addressed racism and inequality in Chicago. He had not, but he had provided his cronies and supporters with millions in construction and construction-related jobs. On December 20th, 1976, Daley died on the job. His legacy, a finely tuned machine, would survive for decades.
Mayor Richard J. Daley primarily wanted political power, not money.
Federal government, the Justice Department, would have loved to pin something on Richard J. Daley, and they never did.
Daley's passing should have been an opportunity for real change, an end to the corrupt machine, but it wasn't. Democrat Jane Byrne, who'd gotten her start in the Daley machine, ran as a reformer and became the first female mayor of a major U.S. city. Tougher and smarter than most of her male counterparts, Byrne eventually fell in with the wrong crowd. She was defeated after only one term by a real reformer. Chicago Mayor Harold Washington was the city's first black mayor. Hounded and hamstrung by the Verdoliak 29, a group of mostly white aldermen, the charismatic mayor wrested control of the city away from the 29 and was elected to a second term, only to die before completing it. Inspired by Harold Washington's example, a young Barack Obama was drawn to Illinois politics. Starting out as a community organizer, he rose through the ranks to become the nation's first black president. It's generally agreed the Obamas escaped to Washington in the nick of time, because if you linger in Illinois politics long enough, you'll get tainted. The Obamas' brief involvement with Tony Rezko, a developer/convicted felon, in a shady property deal almost became their whitewater. But it didn't. Now, around the time old man Daley was basking in the glow of his all-powerful machine, another big star was rising in Illinois politics. Democrat Otto Kerner was a decorated World War II hero, a prominent lawyer and later judge, and the 33rd governor of Illinois from 1961 to 1968. But he should have left political filmmaking, and especially acting, to Illinois native Ronald Reagan.
Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Nice to be able to come in and visit with us a little bit today. Won't you sit down?
Thank you, sir.
I hope you don't mind if I call you Tom. I want you to feel right at home. I understand you come here to learn about state government.
Well, I'm going...
Government isn't something that happens far away. It always starts at home.
Well, what about the future?
Why not start with the past? Go out to New Salem and find out how Abraham Lincoln started there. Let the past speak to you. It has a fascinating voice. A fascinating voice. Here is the place where the grassroots of democracy are nourished. The people truly preserve our system of government. You'll have to find out if your generation is to survive. You're a young man. Now is the time for you to ask your questions and find your answers. Learn what our country really stands for.
What Kerner lacked on the silver screen, he more than made up for on the national stage. Following the race riots in the late 1960s, President Johnson asked the governor to prepare a comprehensive report for his administration.
I'm tonight appointing a special advisory commission on civil disorders. Governor Otto Kerner of Illinois has agreed to serve as chairman.
The landmark Kerner Report, still widely respected, offered a sobering conclusion that our nation is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. Now, I'm certain the late governor wished his story ended there, but it didn't. Shortly after leaving office, he was indicted, brought down by a lady and her ponies.
Otto Kerner became enmeshed in taking racetrack stock for decisions related to racetrack dates, who's going to get the big race on the 4th of July, that kind of thing. And he took the racetrack stock as essentially a bribe. He probably didn't see it that way.
But that wasn't all he did. The legendary Marge Everett, who ran the track, needed highway on-off ramps to provide her gambling clientele easier access. So the Kerner administration obliged.
The way that Governor Kerner got caught involves not just greed, but breathtaking stupidity. The lady who had bribed him, she had actually written off the bribes as a tax-deductible expense. So, right, we're going to notify the IRS that we're bribing the governor. Good luck with that.
She told prosecutors she thought payoffs were a legitimate way of doing business in Illinois. And that kind of makes sense in the pay-to-play state.
Kerner was sort of a good government type. Then he slipped and got caught. And he ended up in prison.
Perhaps taking a page from his boss, Kerner's Secretary of State Paul Powell, a favorite of Mayor Daley, also ran afoul of the law. Powell was in charge of license plates, which authorities posthumously discovered had given him a license to steal. His most famous quote should have been a red flag to everyone.
Powell once said, "There's only one thing worse than a defeated politician, and that's a broke one." I'm surprised he didn't put that on the license plates.
How about this? Illinois has more personalized license plates than any other state.
Well, that's not true.
One of my favorite corruption stories is about Paul Shoebox Powell. Back in 1965, he introduced a very efficient way that people could pay for their Illinois license plates. They could make a check out to him personally.
A year after Powell took office, they started investigating him for corruption, and then he was exonerated. Both Republicans and Democrats were on this guy.
And so, allegedly, was Powell's secretary/mistress, who occupied a cinder block love nest he'd rented for them in Springfield, the state capital. And then, if you liked the guy, something terrible happened.
Powell dies of a heart attack and his lawyer shows up, and you had all of this money and cash and checks stuffed in the walls and in shoeboxes.
That's how he became Paul Shoebox Paul.
In addition to the $800,000 they found in his 2-room hotel suite, they found 49 cases of whiskey, 14 transistor radios, and 2 cases of creamed corn. You know what? He was a hoarder.
Meet Dan Walker, an Illinois governor who didn't like Mayor Daley or Daley's machine. Walker was a progressive Democrat and the author of a scathing report about Daley's police force. He described their attacks on demonstrators at the 1968 Democratic National Convention as a police riot. Boss Daley was furious.
Governor Dan Walker, a liberal populist, was seen as a champion of a new and emerging generation of the late 1960s and early 1970s.
The sophisticated Walker graduated from Northwestern Law School, and like his good friend President Jimmy Carter, he was an Annapolis-trained naval officer. But he knew if he could convince rural downstaters he was just a country boy, he'd have a chance to be their governor. Wearing old hiking boots and a red bandana, Walker decided to walk the entire state. The stunt worked because he took office in 1973, and his 1,200-mile trek inspired this countrified ballad.
He's a winner walking home, walking home. Yesterday, a winner came home, walking
home. Walker loved being governor and the perks that came with the job. But the reformers' relentless attacks on Daley's Democratic machine guaranteed his first term would be his last.
Dan Walker went away to the slammer, but he went away for crimes committed after he was governor of the state.
When he left, he became head of a savings and loan, and he mixed his role as head of the savings and loan and his private finances. And that's what sent him to prison.
If you do something wrong, and I did do something wrong, call it a regulation, call it a law, I was wrong. If I can be remembered for anything, it's ethics.
You know, today there's a lot of emphasis on women catching up with men in terms of political power, but in Illinois, women have always been competitors.
One of the most celebrated cases of corruption in the history of America happened in Dixon, Illinois.
Dixon, Illinois, the boyhood home of Ronald Reagan.
That's right, Tim.
The actor.
Yes, Tim. Dixon, population 15,000, is also home to the most enterprising criminal in the history of Illinois corruption.
Ms. Crundwell, a couple words?
Rita Crundwell was convicted of embezzling $53.7 million from the town's taxpayers in 2012.
By holding the combined offices of treasurer and comptroller, Rita was able to set up a fake municipal account only she had access to. She'd forge invoices to transfer money into that account, then write checks to herself. So how did Rita spend all that money?
She was buying homes in Florida as well as Illinois.
$2 million RV, jewels, 400 quarter horses.
And she was winning international championships with her horses and her riding.
She's living in this small town and she's living like Queen Elizabeth, and nobody thought, hey.
People thought, oh, it must be inherited wealth, or she must have very nice boyfriends, or something.
And it caused great problems. They couldn't get police radios, they had to cut back services like paving streets, and no one could figure out why they didn't have enough money to provide public services.
A co-worker whose pay had been frozen for years by Rita's austere budgets finally discovered Crundwell's deception, and the FBI was notified.
$53 million over 20 years, and just a staggering amount of money.
Don't you think you owe the people of Dixon an apology, Rita?
Even though she pleaded guilty and is cooperating with federal investigators, Crundwell is looking at a 20-year prison sentence.
The citizens of Cicero, Illinois, a Chicago suburb, were also victims of a woman who exploited the public trust. Once primarily known as home to gangster Al Capone, Cicero is now known as the home of fraudster and Republican Betty Loren Maltese, Cicero's town president for over a decade.
Through this whole campaign, it was always intertwined by half-truths, innuendos, false allegations.
Betty was adored by her public, but her political opponents and the feds had their doubts about her leadership.
This is the first time where there's been essentially a looting of a town.
Betty Loren Maltese was convicted of federal corruption charges that involved a scheme to funnel money from a local insurance fund to herself and her cronies in Cicero.
Her husband had started the deal. He was connected to the mob. So once he went to jail, she became the town president and continued the insurance scheme. You should always pass these things on in a family.
Sentenced to prison along with her co-conspirators, Betty did almost 7 years and was released to a Chicago halfway house, the same house where convicted Congressman Dan Rostenkowski and convicted Congressman Mel Reynolds stayed after their release from prison.
I want to sound like I'm bragging, but even after my indictment, I won an election with 85% of the vote.
Only in Illinois. Now, it probably seems like I'm favoring white criminals in this documentary, especially white Democrats. And that stands to reason because in Illinois, white Democrats have controlled the reins of power longer, giving them more time and opportunities to steal. But rest assured, minorities have been competing in the political corruption game too. And it doesn't get more high profile than Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. and his wife, Chicago Alderwoman Sandy Jackson. As everyone knows, Jesse Jr. is the son of one of the most controversial and important political leaders in America.
Jesse Jackson Sr. has been a force within this country's history generally. He was someone who comes out of the civil rights era in the 60s. He also was someone who ran for president in 1984. So he's the predecessor of Barack Obama.
We must turn to each other and not on each other and choose higher ground.
His son came up in that environment, but we also see the downside to that.
Jesse Sr. had extremely high hopes for his son, and Jesse Jr. was doing his best to live up to them. The two had even co-authored a book, ironically titled, It's About the Money.
Jesse Jackson Jr., he's someone who had been upheld, or there were great hopes associated with him, who could have done great things with his power.
Incredibly brilliant, went to law school, had the charisma, and became congressman.
While Jackson Sr.'s presidential bids in the 80s both failed, he was certain his son could one day land the top job. It was not to be. Instead, Jesse Jr. and his wife Sandy suffered a terrible fall from grace.
I knew Jesse Jackson Jr. from when I did Jesse Jackson Sr.'s campaign for president. I got to know him and Sandy as well. I mean, he didn't make a move without calling me. But then all of a sudden there was this arrogance, and everything that I told him to do, he did the opposite of.
Jesse Jackson Jr. and his wife were convicted. Both did jail time. The charges centered around misusing campaign funds to buy personal items.
$750,000 worth of personal items. Many of them were more closely associated with a Michael Jackson impersonator than with a respected U.S. congressman and his wife. But the congressman did show remorse and took full responsibility when the cameras were rolling.
It's not a proud day. I'm sorry I let everybody down.
He's a public servant, and how he could have most served his people would have been to not engage in corruption.
I do believe Jesse Jackson Jr. was suffering from bipolar disorder. I understand what happened with him. I'm not condoning what happened to him. But Sandy, you should have been the one to stop it. She went along with it. And that's where I have the problem.
The Jackson family represents both the wonderful and the tragic when it comes to Black politics.
When we have such a limited representation, it's not just as though we're losing a hero, it's like we're losing power in a way.
The nature of politics is that you can do all these great things, but you're remembered for your biggest mistakes.
Yes. Now keep in mind, many abusers of the public trust are appointed, not elected. Such was the case with Chicago Public Schools CEO Barbara Byrd Bennett, who arrived in Chicago bent on chasing, then living her dream.
I had parents who encouraged me to have a dream, to chase my dream, to capture my dream, and to live my dream.
Okay, but everyone hoped her dream involved educating 400,000 Chicago school children, not just setting up schemes to keep her personal cash flowing because she had tuition to pay and casinos to visit, as the feds would discover in her emails.
She had backroom deals with a company that she'd worked for that was not vetted. No one asked the question until some brave soul said, hey, we've got to blow the whistle on this.
Barbara Byrd Bennett was handpicked by former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, whose adorable nickname for her was Triple B. I'm pretty certain Emanuel, who fancied himself the education mayor, would have liked a do-over on his choice of Triple B, who already had a shaky reputation from her time spent in the Detroit and Ohio public school systems. But what she did in Chicago was really disappointing. Mismanaging the third largest school system in the country, she awarded over $20 million in no-bid contracts to friends and former business associates in exchange for cash and a great gig when she left office. So the feds reimagined her dream, giving her a 4.5-year timeout in prison. And as for the children she failed,
I am terribly sorry, and I apologize to them. They deserved much more.
don't feel too bad for Triple B. Her cushy prison also has an adorable nickname.
I think one of the most notorious examples of corruption among the city council was Rita Troutman. I was covering federal court at the time, and you could hear a prosecutor explain this one day, and they had zero interest in Rita Troutman. They were surveilling these different gang members, and then they started seeing that one of the gang members was hanging out with this alderman. You know, the FBI agents were like, wait a minute, isn't that Rita Troutman? What are they doing together?
Well, first, he was her boyfriend, and second, they were doing shady business together. Also, Donnell Scandalous Jihan was no ordinary gang member. He was a top chief in the Black Disciples. He got so big, he made it onto America's Most Wanted.
What they ended up doing was having somebody flip on her. She was wiretapped. They recorded her saying, most aldermen are hoes.
Troutman was charged with shaking down real estate developers wanting to do business in her ward, then lining her pockets with the payoffs.
So ultimately, Rita Troutman pleaded guilty to 2 federal counts of bribery while she was an alderman, and she went to prison.
Unfortunately for the long-suffering citizens of Troutman's 20th Ward, their new alderman, former Chicago Police Sergeant Willie Cochran, was not the reformer he claimed to be.
Willie Cochran was in council chambers today until learning he was indicted on charges of wire fraud, bribery, and extortion. He's accused of taking $30,000 from a charitable fund set up to help families and children in his Southside ward.
Since 1972, 34 Chicago aldermen have been convicted on corruption charges, and Cochran makes it 35. Latinos make up roughly 1/3 of Chicago's population and 17% of Illinois'. For years, the political machine deprived them of adequate representation by using tactics designed to suppress voter turnout and to keep machine-friendly incumbents in power.
In the Little Village neighborhood where I'm from, we've had an alderman that's been there for over 25 years.
That would be machine-friendly Alderman Ricardo Munoz, and 25 years was enough for younger voters who welcomed his retirement.
The majority of the Latino aldermen had been appointed by a machine mayor. However, I feel like that is changing.
And it is changing, as those machine-connected aldermen are either getting voted out or getting caught up in corruption investigations.
But Latinos have only been involved in politics in Chicago for the last 30 years. So we haven't been around long enough to, I guess, get caught being corrupt.
Well, that's not totally true.
Former Chicago Alderman Ambrosio Medrano is now a 3-time convicted felon, getting a 10.5-year sentence for scheming to pay bribes for medical contracts and receiving kickbacks. Medrano was also ensnared in Operation Silver Shovel back in 1996.
Medrano was so busy helping himself, he couldn't help himself. But he did have some words of wisdom for his politically ambitious son.
My advice to him is that, look, whatever you do, there's nothing wrong with helping people. Just don't take any money. Don't take any money.
I think money in politics is what really defines a machine politician. However, that is changing. Young candidates relying heavily on social media, not buying expensive television ads, are challenging the incumbents in their wards, which is something that has been pretty unheard of until recently.
Now, you can't talk about political corruption in Illinois and not touch on the 22-year reign of Chicago Mayor Rich Daley, the son of Boss Daley. A machine politician through and through, Richie's machine differed somewhat from his father's because of the Shachtman decrees, issued in the 1970s and 80s. The decrees attempted to end patronage jobs, government jobs given to individuals only if they agree to do political work for the party. Because political machines thrive on patronage jobs, the decrees did slow the spread of corruption. For a while.
Richard J. Daley, he had 40,000 city jobs at his disposal. There aren't those jobs anymore. And so some of the more established politicians will say, there is no machine, the machine is dead, because we don't have these jobs to hand out.
It may be on its last legs now, but the corrupt machine was not dead under Rich Daley, because the public servants down at City Hall could always be trusted to find a way around patronage laws. And if that didn't work, they'd bend the law. Theoretically, this would provide Rich Daley with the necessary cover and deniability he'd need when various patronage job scandals like hired trucks came to light.
Tim Novak, a star investigative reporter at Chicago Sun-Times, would walk to the train every day in the Chicago neighborhood, and he saw a truck that was sitting there doing nothing, and he always wondered, why is that truck there?
And then he saw some more trucks just hanging out at the McDonald's parking lot and found out that they were essentially being hired to just sit there.
The city of Chicago had its own trucks. Why were they hiring trucks? And they start digging, and guess what? People who own these truck firms have connections to the Daleys. It was a way to pay back, your foot soldiers who get you elected. You need to give them something, and hired trucks was just another example of patronage.
When the trucking scandal broke, Mayor Daley said he knew nothing about it and criticized his aides, saying they failed to alert him to the problem.
You like the word fall guy. He is not a fall guy.
In addition to knowing nothing about hired trucks, he didn't know the extent of his second cousin's involvement in that scandal, or that his son had a hidden interest in a multi-million-dollar deal with the city, or that his nephew, Robert Van Ecko, had been part of a real estate venture that lost $54 million of a city pension fund. But in spite of the nepotism, the scandals, the contract cronyism, and the financial mismanagement, Daley had many supporters, and like his dad, was never convicted of anything. As mayors, the two Daleys perpetuated machine politics in Chicago for a combined 43 years. All right, let's get back to the A-list of Illinois' political criminals, the convicted governors. Illinois citizens almost expect to pay a corruption tax, but corruption can't always be measured in dollars and cents. sometimes political corruption can result in lost lives. Which brings us to the crimes of Nobel Peace Prize nominee, Republican Governor George Homer Ryan.
There were 9 deaths altogether under George Ryan that we know of. They were caused by truck drivers who should not have had driver's licenses.
I knew George way before he went to prison. We did have a working relationship. He was just a country guy who was a family man, had been a pharmacist, married the farmer's daughter.
George Ryan was a Republican machine politician, but he was able to cross aisles, be friendly with all the people in politics.
He pushed through the ban on the death penalty.
He released people off of death row, and it prompted a Nobel Peace Prize nomination.
He was not what you would consider somebody that would be indicted on 18 felonious counts.
So what did this country boy do to get himself sent to prison? Well, his crimes started long before Ryan became governor, when he was Secretary of State, that driver's license office once occupied by Paul Shoebox Powell.
My role in the George Ryan case was back in 1998. I got a call from the FBI about people at the Secretary of State's office, the DMV, were taking bribes in order to pass people on their commercial driver's licenses.
One of those that got a bogus license turned out to be the driver who was involved in an accident that killed a family.
A dangling piece of metal fell off the driver's truck. The man did not speak English. CB radio operators then tried to reach him and alert him.
Not knowing how to speak English, not passing the test legit, and causing a crash like that.
The Willis family van rolled over a chunk of metal that had fallen off the back of a truck. The gas tank burst into flames, killing 6 young children, but sparing their parents. An investigation eventually led all the way to Governor George Ryan's office.
We learned that the people inside the Secretary of State's offices were taking the bribes, but using the bribes to buy their allotment of campaign fundraising tickets for George Ryan's political campaign. And so now we had public safety crisis meets political corruption.
At the end of Operation Safe Road, there were almost 80 defendants who were charged.
And George Ryan was defendant number 66. But the Operation Safe Road investigation wasn't the only scandal that helped put the governor away.
A pattern began to emerge that Ryan was routinely exchanging government acts, contracts, and decisions for cash, whether it was money for vacations, the use of vacation homes, a reception for George Ryan's daughter.
Prosecutors showed at one point that George Ryan hadn't used an ATM card in years. And they then gave all these examples of him gambling, paying for things without credit cards. Where was he getting this cash? I think the underlying bigger issue was that crash. It wasn't the central point of the trial, but it was on trial. You had the father and the mother showing up at sentencing. It was really emotional.
I must tell you that we hurt and sorrow as you parents would for your children. As believers, we know one day we will be reunited.
The way of doing business in the state of Illinois now had victims. It had real victims. It had a dead family. And George Ryan went away to prison.
And what about his wife of 50 years? Surely Laura Lynn Ryan knew something of her husband's crimes?
Prosecutors would argue that she knew almost everything. She knew the extent of her kids being on the payroll, but they look like grandma and grandpa. It doesn't reflect well on the U.S. Attorney's Office to bring a big case against Laura Lynn Ryan.
Even after his release, Ryan takes little responsibility for his criminal past. And why should he? The citizens of his hometown, arguably still suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, have erected a monument to honor him. Him and another disgraced politician from Kankakee, Illinois, Lennington Small, better known as Al Capone's governor.
It's kind of the circle of life of an Illinois politician, I guess.
They have their diehard supporters who are going to stick with them come hell or high water.
Well, it was mostly going to be hell for supporters of our next convicted Illinois governor, Rod Blagojevich. The Elvis wannabe literally talked his way into prison and took corruption in Illinois politics to the next level. He did something so stupid and so out there, he'd be recognized on the world stage.
Thank you.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. While Rod Blagojevich's journey to the federal penitentiary would take a while, it was almost preordained.
Rod Blagojevich is
a fast-talking, highly motivated
mixture of intelligence and idiocy.
Who's a crook.
Blago violated the public trust.
He hurt a lot of people.
Think he got in over his head.
She's a tragic figure.
Surrounded himself with the wrong people.
Tried to commit crimes, but just wasn't very good at doing it.
A failed governor.
Very hard to understand how he really ever got into office.
So how did he get into office?
Rod Blagojevich, I think first and foremost, to me, is a creature of Chicago.
He was a guy who rose up from, the northwest side, lower middle class.
Came from a family of Serbian immigrants. I think he felt that he could be the first Serbian president.
His dad worked at the Finkel Steel plant. Rod grows up playing baseball and basketball in the city.
Rod was also a boxer in his youth, a lightweight, but a wannabe heavyweight.
He's constantly kind of looking up to his older brother. Robert's the better looking, Robert's the better athlete. So Rod develops this extreme, outlandish personality because he's trying to overcompensate.
Rod had a couple of obsessions. It was always Elvis.
Jogging.
And poetry. He loves to sort of quote poetry, Emerson, Kipling.
Rod Blagojevich barely made it through college and law school, but he happened to hook up with a woman named Patty Mell. Her father, Dick Mell, was arguably the most powerful alderman on the north side of Chicago.
Dick Mell and the Democratic organization would have a Christmas party every year. And I was working my way around the buffet table when this very nattily dressed young man comes in. And he comes up to me and says, "Which one is Patty Mell?"
Hi, I'm Milorad Blagojevich.
Milorad? That name is
What's wrong with the name Milorad? In Serbian it means one whose name is Steve.
What do you do?
Well, I'm a lawyer. I just graduated from Pepperdine University School of Law.
Wow, Pepperdine University.
Ah, shucks, it's really just a party law school. But I still managed to graduate in the top 100% of my class. Patty Mell, will you marry me?
Yeah. Oh, but we're gonna have to meet my father first. He's a very influential Chicago Democratic alderman.
Oh boy, a young lawyer marrying into a politically connected Chicago family? What a way to strengthen my personal integrity.
Alderman Mell was a kingmaker. He saw a brilliant future for this charming idiot savant.
Blagojevich was anointed by his father-in-law. That's got corruption all over it because Dick Mell is part of the machine.
Mell had a huge patronage army of political workers. He controlled dozens, if not hundreds of jobs. He had access to campaign cash.
That's where Blagojevich really learns kind of the campaign footwork and how important fundraising is and some very old school Chicago stuff.
Rod's around some unsavory characters, the people who basically were getting Mell elected year in and year out and were kind of his stooges.
Alderman Mell was the definition of a where's mine politician. He clearly saw Blagojevich as just another tool to help him expand his power and influence.
The trajectory was interesting. Mell made him a city lawyer. He went from being a city lawyer to a job as a state representative, where he was famously insignificant. Then, when a congressional seat opened up, Dick Mell decides that Rod is ready for Congress.
But Rod was going to need more than Dick Mell's clout to land a congressional seat. Enter famous political strategist David Axelrod, another kingmaker, most of the time, and a guy who's made a lot of money in politics, but he makes it legally, off the politicians he promotes. Axelrod's first mission was to address the problems with Rod's surname.
Probably the most unspellable name as a journalist.
Blagojevich. What is that?
Blagojevich.
My name is Rod Blagojevich. It's a different kind of name.
Different, yes, but it didn't stop him from winning. Arriving in Washington, D.C. as one of 535 congressmen, freshman Blagojevich realized how inconsequential he was. But by this time, emboldened by the political wins his father-in-law had engineered, he got caught up in the fantasy that he might be presidential material. So how was the only Serbian-speaking U.S. congressman going to get noticed?
My fellow Americans, today our armed forces joined our NATO allies in airstrikes against Serbian forces responsible for the brutality in Kosovo.
The one thing that stood out from Blagojevich's congressional tenure was this moment where he tried to broker the release of American servicemen being held in Serbia.
After Clinton ignored his offer of help, he partnered with Clinton's spiritual advisor, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who'd had success with hostage negotiations before.
3 American servicemen are coming home today thanks to the efforts of the Reverend Jesse Jackson and Illinois Congressman Rod Blagojevich.
All the networks were covering it, and it was a moment in the sun for this political figure that Illinois barely knew.
Rod loved the spotlight, even if he had to elbow his way into it. Now it was about being camera ready at all times.
He wanted to be projected as a youthful leader, almost kind of Kennedy-esque in a way. Rod was obsessed with his appearance. He had really fine ties. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on handmade, tailored suits. And then, obviously, his hair is world famous.
You know, he had the hair.
The hair?
The hair.
I think it's about the hair.
I was Rod Blagojevich barber, absolutely. And I will be again when he will be back. Wonderful gentleman, very nice.
Tell us about his hair.
His hair, nice and thick. See, it was easy to cut. He have a good style. Wonderful hair. I wish I would have hair like him, but unfortunately.
Did he dye his hair?
Well, sure he died. I don't.
With his look perfected, it was time once again for Rod's father-in-law to help him with his next career move. Abandoning his secure congressional seat, Rod successfully ran for governor of Illinois, promising reform and an end to corruption. It was from that office, he hoped, he would begin his ascent to the White House. Spoiler alert, Rod didn't make it to the White House. Another politician with a different kind of name came along and, well, you know the rest.
Rod never liked Barack. He always thought that he basically jumped him in line.
He believes that Barack Obama is essentially living the end of Rod Blagojevich's political story.
And that drove Rod crazy.
So while Obama rocketed past Blagojevich on his way to superstardom, Rod had to settle for what he saw as the crummy, low-paying job of Illinois governor. By his second term, his over-the-top, shady campaign fundraising schemes and excessive personal spending had caught the attention of the feds, who wiretapped his home and office.
I don't want to be governor for the next 2 years. I got to get moving. The whole world's passing me by, and I'm stuck in this job as governor now.
Who's passing you by?
Everybody. Everybody.
And because of their excessive spending, $400,000 on wardrobe alone, First Lady Patty used her sketchy real estate business to supplement Rod's meager salary.
Patty works. She's very good at what she does. Her business got dried up because the Tribune's been writing about every one of her real estate clients. I mean, we're struggling financially.
Now things were about to get tragic, Shakespearean tragic. Because of everything he'd done for the ambitious governor, Alderman Dick Mell, Rod's father-in-law, expected some help with a sketchy landfill deal. Rod mistakenly said no.
You know, I should have looked the other way in the landfill, and then my father-in-law would take care of us. I should have done that. Incidentally, he's making money on that thing against, in violation of state law.
Rod was making other enemies too, like all-powerful Illinois Speaker of the House Mike the Velvet Hammer Madigan, and the Chicago Tribune editorial board, who started writing about impeaching Rod.
Madigan, just screwing me. You know, the Tribune editorial, when they endorsed Madigan, they're saying I should be impeached. Our recommendation is fire all those people, get them the out of there, and get us some editorial support.
Even the few good things Rod had tried to do for the people of Illinois were reaping him little or no political capital.
I gave your grandmother a free ride on a bus, okay? I gave your baby a chance to have health care. And what do I get for that? Only 13% of y'all out there think I'm doing a good job. So all of you.
Much of what the feds captured on wiretaps only revealed immoral, disgraceful behavior. But when they heard Blagojevich trying to sell the Illinois Senate seat vacated by President-elect Obama, calling it golden, they had to take action.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, how are you?
I told my nephew Alex, he just turned 26 today. I said, Alex, you know, it's just too bad you're not 4 years older, because I could have given you a U.S. Senate seat for your birthday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've got this thing, and it's golden. And I'm just not giving it up for nothing.
He got drunk, literally, on the power. He got drunk on the spotlight.
Tapes are what killed Rod Blagojevich in the court of public opinion.
This is a very sad day for Illinois government. Governor Blagojevich has taken us to a truly new low. Governor Blagojevich tried to sell the appointment to the Senate seat vacated by President-elect Obama. The conduct would make Lincoln roll over in his grave.
The Blagojeviches seemed shocked. Why were the feds being so hard on Rod?
I have done nothing wrong.
My husband is an honest man, and I know that he's innocent.
Apparently, Rod and Patty didn't think his crimes were any worse than those of 3 previous governors, who all went to prison.
Rod Blagojevich, coming on the heels of George Ryan being disgraced, was certainly hoping that we would have somebody who would carry more dignity to the office.
The feds were fed up, bringing 24 charges of corruption against Blagojevich, including
conspiracy,
bribery,
wire fraud, extortion.
Translation: the feds thought Governor Rod was illegally shaking down various entities and individuals for 2 things: a cushy job after leaving office and more campaign contributions. Within weeks, Illinois did something it had never done before.
The ayes have it, and Governor Blagojevich is hereby impeached.
But before going on trial to face the federal charges, Rod went on a book tour to plead his case in the court of late-night television.
Well, you know that I've been wanting to be on your show in the worst way.
Well, you're on in the worst way, believe me.
It's hard to match up the person who is in this book with the tapes. For instance,
Right.
I've got this thing and it's golden.
Yeah.
You have received criticism, you and your wife, for doing reality shows.
Yes.
Governor, I have great respect for you, but Rod, you're fired.
The Blagojevich phenomenon wasn't just television. It kind of took over pop culture and entertainment in general. He turned up in paintings. Stencil drawings were showing up around Chicago, just on the streets, on like alley walls. Kind of like Banksy. One of the weirdest appropriations was Blago shampoo. And of course, at the Second City, there was like a rock opera about this Blagojevich saga. He's so popular. So I reached out to Rod's publicist, and I said, would he maybe be interested in appearing in the show? He'll do it for $5,000. It pumped up ticket sales. We ran for about another 6 months.
Rod Blagojevich, you'll be 2 in time. Rod Blagojevich, wish I had your hairline. Rod Blagojevich, you look young but you're old. I've got this thing, and it's gold. Blagojevich, jogging down the road. Blagojevich, won't get the Senate seat sold. Blagojevich, your hair's a jello mold. I've got this thing, and it's gold.
Enjoying all the attention, Rod was confident he'd be found not guilty as he entered the courtroom for his first trial. And why shouldn't he be confident? This is Illinois, where citizens tolerate corruption. Almost predictably, a hung jury resulted in a mistrial. But had it been up to jury foreman Jim Matsumoto, a highly principled Vietnam vet, things would have been very different.
I was not a fan of Mr. Matsumoto to begin with. I didn't want him on the jury. I was overruled, and he voted to convict on every single count throughout the trial.
And he was the only member of the jury who did.
To let something go as egregious as Rod Blagojevich's conduct in office is unconscionable. You can't let that kind of corruption go.
The prosecutors had a tough time. So in the second trial, they refined it a lot more. They made it smaller.
They took out a lot of the extra stuff from the first trial that jurors said they were confused about. They focused on the Senate seat and Barack Obama, and that's when he was convicted on all counts.
Not surprisingly, Blagojevich reacted to his 14-year prison sentence today by quoting poetry.
Rudyard Kipling, in his poem If, among the things he wrote was, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same.
I am from Russia. To have 14 years in jail, you need to kill somebody.
But Rod wasn't in Russia. He was in denial in Illinois. Of course there'd be a harsh sentence for the fourth Illinois governor in modern times to be convicted of corruption.
Corruption in Illinois is not tolerable. Governor Blagojevich did not get that message.
Rod's Last Supper as a free man was eaten here. And perhaps a touching tribute to his wife, it was a patty melt. His new home would be just down the street at the Federal Correctional Institution Englewood in Colorado.
In a lot of ways, Rod is a loner. But you have to make friends in prison, and he's sort of drawn to surprisingly, the drug dealers. They call him Gov. He's found that the white-collar criminals are habitual liars and are kind of con men. Rod is still 100% to his toes convinced that he's completely innocent.
Appeal after appeal failed. Rod's only hope was a presidential pardon or commutation from his nemesis. When that didn't happen, 20-year-old daughter Amy delivered the Blagojevich response.
Dear Barack Obama, if you didn't notice, I didn't refer to you as Mr. President. That's because you've lost my respect. I thought you had a moral compass. Turns out, you're selfish and spineless. You stood by and watched the appellate court decision. You did nothing, said nothing for 8 long years. My father is guilty of nothing. He made mistakes. He's not angry. He used to be. It caused him to drink way too much. I'm glad you're gone. You're not a saint. You were a mediocre president. You were a bystander to a completely un-American act of injustice. You're just as guilty as those who created it in the first place. Sincerely, Amy Blagojevich.
It's disgraceful. Where are the parents allowing their daughter to blame President Obama for their own misdeeds?
When the old blaming the black guy tactic didn't work, Patty Blagojevich turned to the newly elected president. Clearly, Illinois has a governor problem, and I'd heard the Chicago Gay Men's Chorus had an interesting take on our wayward leaders that was both moving and short. Gentlemen?
By thy prisons ever growing, Illinois, Illinois, where our governors are a-going, Illinois, Illinois, Otto Kerner was the
Did I mention the state bird of Illinois is the northern cardinal?
Yes, Tim, you did.
I did?
Oh, great-great-great-granddad. I know I've painted a depressing picture, and the situation in Illinois is every bit as bad as I've described it. But there are some signs that things might be turning around.
Federal prosecutors have indicted alderman and property tax lawyer Ed Burke for racketeering and bribery.
That's great news, even though the voters in his ward did re-elect him, and I think it'll be a while before the feds get a conviction, if ever. But that's still great news.
Deb Mell, who was appointed to replace her father Dick Mell, an alderman for 38 years, has conceded victory to opponent Rosanna Rodriguez Sanchez.
We are going to transform this city.
Fantastic. The last Mell gone from Illinois politics. Dick Mell out a while ago, son-in-law Rod, convicted felon, and daughter Patty isn't even in politics. Big win for Illinois. Now, Granddad, you remember I've been talking about the guy who really runs Illinois and has been for over 30 years? Speaker of the House Mike the Velvet Hammer Madigan, the best argument for term limits ever, and the guy whose leadership has brought the state to the brink of financial ruin? Well, the feds are sniffing around people connected to him, and that's hopeful. But I've been saving the best for last. Reformer Democrat Lori Lightfoot, in a landslide victory, has become the first African-American woman to serve as Chicago's mayor. Can you believe it?
We can and we will break this city's endless cycle of corruption.
Congratulations, Lori, but be careful with that aggressive fundraising. Remember Blagojevich. And congratulations to the other new leaders recently elected to the Chicago City Council. But honestly, change has got to happen at the state level too. As for the rest of the United States, let this story of Illinois' decline serve as a cautionary tale. Because when people stop caring, stop voting, they can easily end up with a leader like
Blagojevich, you'll be doing time. Blagojevich, wish I had your hairline. Blagojevich, you look young but you're old. Yo, I've got this thing and it's gold. Blagojevich, jogging down the road. Blagojevich, won't get that Senate seat sold. Blagojevich, your hair's a jello mold. Yo, I've got this thing and it's gold. Why these governors always lying? Rod Blagojevich and Joe Ryan, like these fools ain't even trying. Always selling, never buying Senate seats.